This week's episodes were brought to you by the generous support of Yukofin. Yeah, this is going to be interesting because normally with these tutorials, I sort of have very, I don't know, set plans for these fixed episodes to try to focus and target fire and things like that. So this is going to be a little bit more loosey-goosey, a little bit more, not exactly the same as Let 'em Dare type programming, because I do have a little bit more of an idea, and it's going to be more tutorially than me just trying to get stuff done really fast for Let 'em Dare. But yeah, I think it's going to be fun. I think it's going to be good today. So if you haven't watched, we've only had 2 episodes online so far for the mostly civilized Hex engine. We've looked at tile maps before, we've looked at some Hex things before, but the idea with this particular project is going to be to do a more complete, I mean, still sort of, bare bones skeleton, but more complete look at getting it up to your standard sort of 4X elements, the sort of thing you would expect to see in a Civilization style game. That is to say, terrain generation, unit movement, probably the idea of the idea of plopping down a city and then having it spawn some units, or building buildings, or making more settlers so you can make more cities, that sort of thing. We want to get some of those baseline elements in there as much as possible. So what we've done so far is we've done the tile generation, and we did it with a new type of math that I found on the excellent redblobgames.com blog. This is by a guy named Amit, who's been putting up tutorials and write-ups about different game programming techniques for well over a decade. Very handy source for lots of things. And he introduced the idea of these storing these hexes as a different type of data storage, cubic coordinates. And it turns out that if you do that, even though it's not as intuitive up front, it makes the math for a lot of things really simple and quite quick to calculate a lot of things, including distance between hexes and different things like that. So far, what we've got here in this map that's got quite a few tiles loaded in, the frame rate's really good. I'm getting over 1,000 FPS right here. I just turned off the VSync so that we could confirm. If we do zoom out, the frame rate does start to drop a little bit as it renders more things, but you can see here we're still getting, I mean, this view over here, right, this view over here, that's way more tiles than you ever tend to see at once in a Civ game. Even if I move up this way, I mean, this would be insanely zoomed out for a Civ game. I don't think Civ 5 or Civ 6 lets you zoom out this far. We're still getting over 100 FPS. Obviously, there's not a whole lot going on with the animations and things, but we also haven't done any sort of optimization pass whatsoever. Most notably, the tiles that exist outside of the camera view, you notice that as I move around here, the tiles do loop around, so you can loop around. But the tiles that are outside the camera view are still there. They don't have as much of an impact when they're not being rendered, but we could cut back on even more overhead, mostly CPU overhead, if we somehow disabled things outside of the camera view from culling. But that may not be required. There's other ways that we can optimize things, different ways that we can do batches and different stuff like that. But honestly, I don't think that the tile rendering, even when we get more sort of textures on there and lumpy sort of hills and mountains and things like that, I don't think that's going to add a whole lot of overhead to our rendering layer. Things like units with animations will add a little bit more, but there's not going to be 10,000 of them. I don't know how many tiles are there. We'd have to take a look at the code to see what is what. But I think we're in pretty good shape right now. So we had a couple of questions coming in. Flabstack says, "Hey Quill, congrats on the 11 Dare entry. Was it your best entry ever?" Well, I mean, that's a hard thing to quantify. Are you asking if it was the best outcome ever? So for those of you who don't know, the most recent Let 'em Dare that I did, where I made the game Tub of War, came in 6th place overall. I believe it came in. I'll load up. Hold on a sec. I'll load up again here. It came in 6th or 7th for fun. What was it? 6th place in the overall department, 7th place for fun, and 6th place for humor. Now, I have had one other game, and that's out of, I can't remember the numbers. There was 3,000 entries in total, but about 11 or 1,200 in the compo category, which I compete in. So out of over 1,000 entries in my category, I got 6th place, which is pretty good, and for fun and humor. I have had one other game get a 6th place finish overall. That was Drill 18, although I do not believe that it did as well in the other categories. And for me, one of my most important categories, I always say, is fun. I don't usually go for something that's specifically innovative. Graphics and audio, obviously those are really important, but the most important thing to me is always, is the game fun? And hitting top 10 in the fun category made me super happy. So yeah, that was really good. Really, really happy. Wonder Rob, Quill, did I miss the explanation why this math makes it easier when I watch the first two videos? So far it's been looking more complicated. We touched upon it a little, but not much. It's going to become super obvious in a second. Is it in hex map? Do we know? I guess we don't have the distance functions implemented yet, or yeah. It's going to become obvious in a second, because so far, I mean, ignoring the position from camera, this function is like big, right? Other than that, there's not a whole lot going on in here, but we're going to explain it in a second. And if you've gone and followed that link that I had in the description to that the page describing this, it should become really obvious why this is simple, but it'll become obvious as we move forward over here in a second. Yeah, 6.5 out of 10, it's okay. Yeah, that was IGN's rating for Heroes of the Storm, right? Mm-hmm. Make drilling team into a mobile game and swimming cash for the rest of your life. Yeah, probably. I don't know. I don't know if that would be fun though. Oh yeah, so I was gonna just check to see how much of a map we're generating. So right now there's a 60 by 120 map. So that's 7,200 hexes that we're generating right now, which is a lot. And yet our performance is still good, which makes me happy. I think in practice, we'll probably, for now, work on something like a 30 by 60 map. Just, it'll be a little bit more fun, I think, to work in right this moment. If your entry didn't get enough votes to get ranked, well, first of all, if you vote on more people, your entry will end up higher up in the list for other people to vote on, so more people should see it at that point. So that helps. Also, it helps if it's cross-platform. It really helps if it's playable just on the web or something without installing. That makes a big, big, big difference to how many people will play your game as well. I don't actually download that many games. A lot of the games that I go and rank typically are ones I can play on the web. What's a large Civ map size? Yeah, we can look it up. 180 by 180. I guess Civ 6 map sizes. Because that's always an interesting question, too. So for Civ 5, apparently, Civ 5, a huge map was 128 by 80. Right? So we were just shy of a huge map in Civ 5. This would be a huge map in Civ 5, apparently. And Civ 6, they're a little smaller. Oh, that's interesting. In Civ 6, it looks like a huge map would be 106 by 66. So the test map we had running there was actually bigger than a test map in Civ 6. So the Civ 6 one's a little taller, but not quite as wide. And overall, I think we had more hexes. I'm not going to do the math here, but I assume this is a little less than 7,200 that we had before. And of course, the huge map size do tend to bog down in late game for a lot of those. Although most of it has to come down to AI calculation. It's not so much the rendering thing, because there's a lot of culling and optimizing you can do, because you can't zoom out that far and you can't see that many tiles at once. It's not the rendering overhead that tends to kill it. It's the processing, especially on the AI turns. I mean, even on the huge map, when you're taking your turn as a player, it tends to be pretty quick. And then you hit next turn, it's like, well, I guess I'm going to go make a sandwich now. Especially like later on in the game, right? When the AI has like 20 cities and like 100 units, and it's got to figure out district placement. It's like, yeah, hit next turn, go make a sandwich, because it's going to take a while before it finishes. So those will be challenges that we'll have to take a look at some point. The AI Civ 6 is horribly slow. The thing is, I don't know if they can improve it that much. I think the AI in Civ 6 could probably be stronger, but whether it could be faster, I mean, there's always room for some optimization, but it's a pretty hairy thing. Anyway, we should start soon. Right, so clean code, eye candy. Well, this code does need to be commented up a little bit more, but it's not too bad. And when I'm doing tutorially type stuff, at least all of my variables tend to be like really verbose, sort of self-documenty. Sometimes my variable names are a bit too long, but at the same time, it's kind of clear what they hold, except for the QRS, but, that's it. I mean, compared to Civ 5. Yeah, the AI in Civ 6 is slower than Civ 5, but you have to remember the AI in Civ 5 doesn't have to calculate district or wonder placement. The AI in Civ 6 has got a hell of a harder job to figure out what the heck it's doing with itself. Even in military, it's got to figure out support units, which is something that Civ 5 didn't have. Civ 6 is really like, from an AI point of view, I'm betting it's twice as complicated. Even though, like, tiny little changes, but those tiny little changes, right? It's only a couple extra features, but it multiplies everything else to an insane level. AI in Civ 5 had more time to be optimized. That's true, too. I mean, Civ 5 at release was pretty rough. Civ 4 at release was really rough. So, we'll start programming in a second here. I just want to make sure we're caught up on the initial things. Pretty unique to C#. If it's got the getter and setter traits and property, it gets a capital letters. Yeah, so I mean, whether or not you capitalize things or whatever, I mean, that's just convention and whatever. I've tried to adapt as much as possible to what I've seen to be the sort of Microsoft suggested conventions for properties and method names and things like that. I treat a public field, which I think the name, a public variable as a class thing, as exactly the same. I mean, to me, there's no difference between this field and this property. I mean, there's literally no difference in terms of use in any way whatsoever. So you can just like swap from one to the other at will. So anyway, we'll leave that there. Oh yes, we got some tips in. So let's go ahead and process that for a... Whoa! What? What? Whoa, what? Okay. I assume that Tipsplosion earlier was just, you know, the first tip of the stream. It always Tipsplosions. Frosted Mantis. What the heck, man? No message. Oh, wait, okay. No message on the last one. The first one, just keep it up, fam. You know, it always... I promise I'm going to start programming in a second. I promise. It always blows me away that there are so many people out there that are willing to watch goddamn programming. And, like, not just watch, but support a channel that does goddamn programming through Patreon and through tips like this. Like, if you had told me, you know, a couple of years ago, well, actually, I started the programming channel a long time ago, but before I started the programming channel, if you could have told me that this would be a viable route to, you know, make content and have viewership, I thought you were crazy, because it seems so unlikely, and yet it's great. I love the internet. I love you guys. I love everything. Oh, I guess, just in case you missed the stream, hold on. I want to show you one more thing, and then we start programming. I'll show you one more thing. Where the hell did I put it? Wait. Oh no, I cleaned up, and I put things away. Where's the plaque? I was gonna... Oh, there it is. See, never clean up. Just leave everything lying around everywhere. It makes it a lot easier to find stuff. Much better. But in case you missed it, I showed this on the Saturday stream, but I did get my plaque. Where's my preview? For 100,000 subscribers on Quill 18 Creates, the silver play button from YouTube. Like, again, the fact that that's something that can happen... Blah. There's just no words. There are just no words. All right, let's get this shit on the road. So, there's two things I want to cover. So, thank you very much, Frosted Mantis, and thank you everyone who supports the channel through Patreon and just showing up and watching. That's, you know, it's all you need to do. It's all you need to do. So, we have the base data structure to hold our hex information. We have this pure C# class. This is not a mono behavior. It's not a component attached to a game object, okay? This is a pure C# class by itself, just to hold some data. The hex map class over here is a mono behavior that's attached to a game object. It's just responsible for generating the map. It's just a simple loop over here that loops through the rows and column counts over here, instantiates another one of these pure hex objects, then figures out the correct in-world position for this hex based on the position of camera, because what we do is we loop. If you're too far from the camera on one side, hang on. So if the camera's moving this way, the hex that's right over here will get looped to the other side so that the camera can run into it again. So that's what that does. We then instantiate a game object. We do have a prefab. So this game object prefab here, this is the thing that's got the actual 3D mesh of the hex, although we could generate that at runtime very easily, and who knows, in the future we might. So we've got this hex prefab. It's literally just a prefab, hex prefab over here. It's literally just Get in there. Oh, you're recompiling some code. Where are you? There you go. It's just a very, very, very simple model that I threw together in Blender over here. And it's got a component on it called Hex component. The Hex component is simply responsible for updating the position. Again, when the camera moves, then this update position gets called. I think right now we're actually calling it every frame, although we don't have to. But the idea is when the camera moves, we call update position on the actual game object, which communicates back to its hex data and says, where should I actually be positioned now? Oh, I should be here instead, and does that. Very, very, very simple setup. So yeah, so we've got this cubic representation of our hex. Now, really what we work with is just the two numbers over here, the two values over here, which we have labeled cube and r. This is our column and row. It's not exactly a column, because if you had a square grid, then you have exact columns, right? In the hex situation, you don't have real and for true columns, because they zigzag. Like, they have no choice, that they have to grind. Where are you? They have to zigzag a little, right? Doom, 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 doom. So column is a very loose word, and in fact it becomes even looser with either an axial or cubic representation, because they're actually, the columns are sort of flowing diagonally. What I think we should do, I think this is going to make our life way easier going forward here. I think we should add a little label to these hexes that we can turn on and off in debug mode or whatever. But let's go and create an empty inside of this. And we're going to add a text mesh component. We'll note, Unity apparently just bought, well, just a couple months ago or something like that, bought this really good 3D mesh add-on. It used to be a paid add-on. It was so good for generating 3D text that Unity bought it and then just made it for free. I don't think it's built into the game. I think you still have to get it from the asset store, but I think it's free. I'm still just going to use the text mesh tool, even though it's a little bit wonky. But the idea is I want to have this thing. There we go. We're going to go and rotate you around the X. Like that. Excellent. I want you to be middle centered. Excellent. I want you to be... I mean, like, here, the purple debug color. It's going to stand out from whatever the hell else is going on. So that's going to be great. Obviously, we're going to have to scale it down. I mean, we could change the font size, but probably what we want is a relatively high font size that then gets scaled down, because then you tend to end up with just crisper text. Crisper text. It's what happens when you put your text in a certain drawer in the refrigerator. Maybe a little bigger than that. Let's call it 1.5. There you go. So if we go and apply this, we can call this the hex chord label. There you go. Apply this prefab. So now when we hit this, it'll show up everywhere. Excellent. Like that. We can tune the size some more later on. And I guess when we generate this, what we should do is the hex game object dot, well, we can get component in children, because right now we know it's the only one. That might have, we might change the structure of that later. Dot text is going to be set to the column. I'm going to keep saying it that way because of the qubit, but I guess we should use a string.format, right? Which is just going to be like argument 0, comma, probably with no space for this. Normally I would put a space here, but probably something like this. Column row. Acro, I just talked about Text Mesh Pro. Is it actually integrated into Unity, or do you have to download it from the add-on store? Well, I suppose what I could do is grab this random object and say text. Yeah, so I don't see a Text Mesh Pro component. I think it's possible. I'm not actually on the latest version. I didn't update. I'm on 5.6.0, so maybe it's the other one, or maybe you have to get it from the asset store. But no, I haven't actually played with the new Text Mesh Pro stuff. It is supposed to be really, really quite good, though. Anyway, let's hit play again here. Free asset on the store. Yeah, that's what I figured. Oh, and it will be fully integrated later. Ah, that's good to know. So, oops, right, I can't zoom on this view. Let me move you over here. Most likely, this has just killed our performance, by the way. Unity, the text bit tends to be... These are all going to add a million new draw calls, but that's all right. There you go. So there's our 0... Here's our 0, 0 mesh. If we take our camera and move it around, we'll get the... All right, it doesn't loop that way. That's fine. It's interesting. That's oh yeah, 0, 0, and then it climbs this way. And it goes here. But you can see that the 0 column is diagonal. That's by intention. That's part of this system. So I think it'll help to have the coordinates here for our debugging right now. I like that. Okay. So I think what I want to do now is work on interesting map generation. I'm a bit ignorant to Java, but isn't it similar to C#? Yeah, pretty similar. I mean, they're both like heavily like fully object oriented, with no explicit memory allocation. So it's a garbage collector system. It's all passed by reference. Well, some things are passed by value, but there's no pointers. No, it's not legendary time again. We're just doing programming tutorials. So, okay. So there's a few different ways that you can do the map gen. The way it works, I assume, I haven't actually poked around in this, but I'm pretty sure the way it works in actual Civ is the actual map generator is done through probably some external script, like a Lua script or something like that, that is then, executed at runtime to generate the map. I'm not going to incorporate a Lua interpreter into this particular project, although if you want to see how it's done, you can take a look at Project Porcupine, our base building game tutorial series that went on really long and still being actively developed. People have moved the project to a new team repo and they're doing excellent work with it. Really, really happy with what they're doing. It's been amazing. But in there's a built-in Lua interpreter for a variety of different things. I think what we're going to do, just to support different map types later on with ease, is this generate map code over here. I think what we're going to do is we're just going to say that this is virtual. And then what we're going to do is we're going to make a subclass of HexMap here. Is there an easy way to do that? There's probably like a helper for something like this. Like, I want to make a subclass of this. I bet you there is. But what I'm going to do, and I'll just do it inside of Unity here because it'll be slightly less confusing, is I'm going to make HexMap continents. Maybe continent. Single continent map. That's what we're going to work on over here. So instead of being derived from mono behavior, it's actually just going to be derived from the base hex map. And all it's going to be concerned with is the, whoops, not hex. This generate map function that we've now made virtual. We're going to override it in here. That's it. So we're going to make a different version of this. And we are just going to make a little change over here. HexMap object, you're going to use, that's a little annoying. You're going to be a HexMap continent instead. I'm just doing it this way so that I can very easily reference what was there. We're going to make a change to this hex material thing later on, but that's okay. And we're just going to make sure we have the same order. Oh, I guess we just dragged and dropped before, so that's fine. Oh, right. We are going to want to change this up a fair bit, actually. Probably in the base object, though. Okay, let me go and remove this. This one is generate totally random map. Actually, I don't know if I want to do that. I think I might just have the base one just generate an ocean. I kind of like that idea. So instead of hex materials being an array like this, I want to change this up. And I'm going to have fixed material types for use in our advanced map generation stuff here. So we are going to have public material mat ocean. Okay, this is the material used for ocean. Mat, let's see, what do we have in, say, plains, grasslands. Forest doesn't have a material. Forest does not have a material in Civ 5 or 6 or 4. There's a baseline material for the terrain, right? You're on a plain, you're on a grassland, and then there's forest on top of that. right? So forest is a different thing. I think mountains can have a material. Technically, in Civ 6, I don't think this is the case in 5. In Civ 6, mountains still have a type, like you find like grassland mountains. I don't think that has any impact on anything, but technically there's a base type on the mountain tile. But I think we can just assume that like mountains are just mountains. That's going to be okay. And then I think the next thing we're going to do, this hex prefab, we're also going to break this down into hex ocean, or hex, like a water hex. We're going to have a different hex. Like, this is actual 3D shape, right? This is the model for... Actually, we might just want the mesh. Yeah, you know what? That's what we're going to do after all. So we'll still have the hex prefab, because it'll have, you know, components and whatever. But then we're going to have a public mesh water. So it's going to dip down. Although, really, in the end, you'd want a more sophisticated system for this, because, anyway, we'll get to those issues. Mesh, like, flat land. Whoops. Public mesh hill. Public mesh mountain. And yeah, what you're going to want is mech. I've been playing the Battletech thing. What you're going to want is a series of these, because, think about it, especially with the water, you don't want, like, let's say you have a lake, right? So you have, like, you know, flat land, and then it dips down into water. Well, when you have an ocean, you don't want all these cups. You don't want the ocean to be a series of cups. You want it to be flat. So you're actually going to need a more sophisticated system later on, which checks to see the adjacent neighbors and then builds up, you know, the various height things appropriately. I mean, you can do that procedurally, or you could just have a series of, like, this is a water tile, but that's got a coast on the east. This is a water tile that does this. There's all sorts of different things like this. And yes, it should be Mesh Mountain for consistency. But for now, we're just going to start with this. As always, you know, don't overdo it too early. Try not to, like, paint yourself in a corner, but don't do two more things than you have to right now. So we're just going to use a single thing, and then we'll figure out how we're going to sort of blend these things together later on. We could still do it procedurally, starting from a base mesh, and then looking at the neighbors and, like, maybe the height of the middle tile of each of these neighbors, and then adjust the borders accordingly. There's a bunch of different ways that we can do it. So that's going to be that. So our base, so instead of generating a totally random map, generate a map filled with ocean. That's going to be our job. So this thing's job is going to be to create all of our hexes, and then make them ocean hexes over here. So we've got the one prefab, which is going to be good. We set the text mesh over here. But we're also going to the mesh renderer. We've got two things to set. Okay, not exactly. Instead of picking a random material from an array that no longer exists, right, what we're going to do is we're going to grab mat ocean, but also we're going to grab the mesh filter component. Mesh filter is the thing that actually points to the mesh, the model. So we're going to grab the mesh filter, and we're going to say mesh filter.mesh. We're going to use mesh ocean, or mesh water. That's what it is. Like that. So we're going to set the mesh, the material. So we're going to get a world of blue. A world of blue. Now, for now, we're still just going to use one mesh, the hex model mesh, as our work for everything. So our hex map over here, we're going to say, boom. There it is. And the material we're going to have, because we'll probably have ocean and then we'll have shore, like one water mesh, but probably multiple water type materials. So that's why there's a bit of a mismatch in our naming over here. Because I want coast to be a different material than ocean. Lake might have the same or not. I don't know. We'll see how far we get in this. Okay, so there we go. So now you've got a variety of these different meshes. We'll probably want a different way to load these in. They might be loaded in from a data file in like a real game. Actually, that's almost certainly what would happen, but for now, that's going to be perfectly fine. So if I hit play, if I've remembered everything, we should get a world of blue. Derp, derp, derp. Right. Hex Map Continent is doing nothing right now. Hey, I want to say a great big thank you to all the June Patreon supporters and these Mic Check supporters. We've got Yukofin, Eric Sumner, Tiburon, Mighty Mix, Pavel Zdanov, Drazion, Michael McClintock, Aaron Toyson, Craig Mortel, The Not So Evil Engineer, Julien Auger-Lafont, Marius Fieldvold, Speedy Savant, Valiant Cakefiend, Thomas Oberson, Jason Yanity, Stephen Bonnerman, Kale the Quick, and Neil Blakey Milner, and absolutely everyone who watches, shares, favorites, and subscribes to these videos. Thank you so much.